Let me get organized. All right. Can everybody see my screen okay? You should be able to see a slide that says Introduction to OER. Give me a thumbs up. Wonderful. Thank you. So thank you so much for being here. I know it's early. I know it's dark and cold outside. So I really appreciate you taking the step to join us here today. Faye is another librarian, and she's going to be moderating the chat for us today. Feel free to drop questions into the chat at any time as they come up, but we're probably going to be answering most of them at the end of the session. I'm doing my best to make sure we have lots of time for questions. That being said, Faye is going to be in the chat. She'll also be dropping any links or resources that I'm talking about into the chat so you have access to them in real time. I also want to direct you to this link up on the main on the slide that Faye's also going to drop in. This is a LibGuide that I maintain that basically has all the information that you need to get started with OER or open educational resources. So I want to make sure we highlight that for you so you know that basically anything I'm going to talk about today you can find through that guide. So that's kind of your big takeaway today. I want to make sure you have that. All right. So that being said, welcome. My name is Theresa Dooley. I am the instruction librarian and reference coordinator here at the Van Wagenen Library. I have been here at Cobleskill since August 2025. So I'm in just about to begin my second semester. And I came before I was here, I was actually an open education librarian at UMass Amherst, which is where I got into open education and working with open resources. And before I was a librarian, I actually worked in academic publishing. I was the production manager for the journals published by the American Diabetes Association. So I actually have a ton of experience in publishing and licensing. And that's kind of why I am here today to talk to you about the power of open and how it can impact your teaching. Um, that being said, I do want to highlight that I am new to SUNY Cobleskill. So many of the resources that are specific for SUNY are within the SUNY system. So I'm very much learning as I go. I can talk to you about open licensing and project management and how to get things going, but I am still very much learning the platforms that SUNY and SUNY OER use. That being said, my biggest strength, what I call my superpower, is that I can learn in real time right along with you. I'm able to connect resources to support the outcomes and the goals that we set. All right. So I am really here to help us find what we need to learn to get things done. That being said, when I talk about licensing, I want to be very clear that I'm not a copyright lawyer and that none of my advice should be considered legal advice. I can get us in touch with copyright lawyers. We have a great network in the open world, but I just want to make sure that we all understand that I'm not actually providing legal advice. One of the things I'm learning about SUNY is that there's a lot of money available for faculty and teams who want to adopt open resources. So I'm a huge advocate for faculty incentives, meaning that if you're going to make an effort to evaluate your course materials and make them open for your students, I want to get you money to do that. I want to pay for your time and the effort that you're putting in that. And I also want to get you student assistants that can learn as we go and help you also accomplish this work. So really anything that I'm talking about today is an introduction. Just keep in mind that there will be future opportunities and that I'm here to help you learn and go and get that all done. Okay. Another thing I want to make sure everyone knows is that I care a lot about this and I'm a little bit nervous, and that all makes it so I actually talk very quickly. If at any point you can't hear what I'm saying, I've turned on closed captioning, or you can also just raise your hand and let me know. Again, I want to make sure you hear what I'm saying. Uh, so if I talk too fast, just let me know. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. The right screen. First and foremost, I do let people know that I use AI to support my work. For this particular project, I use ChatGPT's 5.2. Actually, I need to update that. And I also use PowerPoint design tools, which is an assistive AI tool. Oh goodness, that's not what we wanted. All right. So today, I'm hoping that by the time you leave this session, you're going to be able to define what OER or open educational resources actually are and what makes them special. All right. I'd also like you to kind of have a general understanding of how adopting OER into your course materials can actually improve student success, equity, and access. All right. And of course, we want you to understand these ideas and also be able to find them for your own courses. So I'm going to give you some resources on how to locate and how to evaluate really high quality OER. So I'm going to open the floor for just a second, and I'm wondering, and again, I know it's early, so bear with me. I'm wondering if anyone here has familiarity with open, and what comes to mind when you think about open, all right? In whatever context you're familiar, if you've heard of open access, open source technologies, open publishing, what comes to mind? Feel free to unmute yourselves or to use the chat, whatever works best for you. All right, I'm seeing lots of free, absolutely. Anybody else have any ideas of what comes to mind when they think about open? That's okay. We can work with free. But that absolutely is a big part of it. Oh, goodness. Okay. R Studio. Okay, so that's actually not even something I'm familiar with, Jess, but I'm assuming that's an open source software. And really, so what a lot of times when people think about open, right, they are familiar with, oh, I love this, adaptable, available, absolutely, right? And most of the times, especially in a higher education environment, people have heard open access, open knowledge, open science, right? And I want to kind of connect the idea that anything in that open knowledge ecosystem, we're using that in classrooms, and that's what makes it an OER. All right. So these are teaching and learning materials that are free for both students and faculty to use. All right. But in addition to being free, the open licensing that is applied to it allows us to not only access it, right, and not have to pay for it, but we also have the ability to revise it, remix it, and share it. Right. So if you have one open resource, you can share it with all of your students without worrying about copyright or legal concerns. Okay. Because that's actually something, right? If you had like a book that was under full copyright, you can't make copies and give those to your students, right? Under copyright. We understand that. Okay. So really, in addition to having free access to something, we want to make sure that we understand that they are adaptable. Okay. So we have access to it and we can also customize them and make it so it really fits our learning environment. So when we talk about open educational resources, there's essentially three ways for us to really participate there. That is for us to either adopt, adapt, or create an OER. Okay. So when we talk about adopting, it's kind of finding an existing resource that can slip right into your curriculum, right into your syllabus. So that could be as simple as replacing a textbook that was published by McGraw-Hill with an OpenStax textbook, right? Or an open book. Um, Oftentimes, what we can do also, in addition to just adopting that, is to make those modifications. So, for example, if you find a Canadian textbook, right, that really matches all of your learning outcomes, some very basic adaptations that you might do there is update currency and unit of measure, right? And there's also going to be cultural differences between a Canadian classroom and one found here in upstate New York. All right. So I really want, when we talk about OER, at least today, I want us to focus on the adoption or the adaptation of existing resources. All right. These are going to be the lowest lift for you and make sure that really you have that it's gonna happen much sooner, right? You don't have to do as much. All right. That being said, I do want to highlight open pedagogy because what this essentially is learning in action, which directly lines with SUNY Cobleskill and what we are trying to achieve, right? And what that is basically it's involving students in generating scholarship in their field. So one example, and I'm going to give you more examples of this, but has anyone ever heard the phrase dead assignment before? Because I know, so what that means basically is the idea that a student's going to write a paper and it's going to get read by the faculty member and then filed and never really seen again. There's no impact. There's very little, actual pressure or understanding that what they're doing like plays a role in the larger research ecosystem. In open pedagogy, for example, what that might be is instead of writing papers, maybe they're writing a chapter and then they can actually participate in the peer review process, right? They can actually go through the editorial review, the writing, they can be part of that process as part of their assignments for the entire semester. So I would really love to see us kind of adopt that mindset so that we can design assignments and projects that are really utilizing that. But for now, especially with the bandwidth that we have here on campus, I think that looking at adoption and adaptation are the really the best options for us. So I'm going to talk briefly about the open licensing that are kind of involved in open, but I want to also highlight that that could be an entire session or professional development opportunity. I actually did a Creative Commons certificate, which was about a year long of work for me to do that. So I want to kind of acknowledge that open licensing can get very complicated and that you don't need to know everything. If you're interested in learning more, I can absolutely do that for you. But at the core of open licensing is that we have kind of these rights. We call these the 5 R's of OER, and that's the ability to retain, reuse, revise, remix, and redistribute materials. All right. Now, I've talked about this in the context of textbooks, and most of the examples I'm going to be showing you are going to be textbooks. But I also want you to think that, and I'm sure you've known this, you're noticing this in your classes, that textbooks are kind of on their way out. Our students are not engaging with textbooks. So in addition to talking about textbooks, we're really talking about these interactive platforms or interactive resources where we have activities built in, right? An OER can also be a syllabus. Making sure that maybe somebody in another institution can kind of build upon your own learning outcomes. And these 5 R's are kind of the core of this. So I just kind of want to make sure that we understand that. Okay. So I want to also acknowledge that copyright is a good thing. Copyright law is incredibly important, and there is going to be situations where something should not be openly licensed. I'm really speaking specifically in an educational context. And it is also possible. I know that we have a program that's specifically with the John Deere model, and that is very much not open. And we're not going to get them to use open resources because their licensing is so tight. So I'm not in any means trying to get rid of copyright. But we also need to acknowledge that copyright was not intended to help people who want to share their work. So specifically in an educational setting, Creative Commons licensing, which is the heart of open licensing, really is that tool. It's that symbol that we're looking for, right? Because that's going to kind of indicate to us that we have, depending on the specific license, we have the ability to remix it, to retain it, to share it. We're going to drop a link for Creative Commons into the chat so you can kind of look more. But I also want to highlight that not everything can be adapted, right? If you have an open access article published, most chances are that you have a license applied to that so that people know that they can download it, access it, and share it, but you can't just change the discussion part and then call it your own. So in most cases, an open access article is going to have an ND clause, which means non-derivative, which means that you can't actually create a new one just by duplicating that, if that makes sense. And again, we can get really into the weeds with the open licensing. I kind of just want to make sure that you understand that with Creative Commons, it's the understanding that we can download, access, share, in some cases, remix, right? It's the understanding that research and information really for us to learn, it means building upon somebody else's knowledge, right? So if we're familiar with the peer review process, we're collaborating, we're working together in that context. And that's really what Creative Commons, where that comes in. All right. So a lot of people, or I saw a lot of comments kind of highlighting the free, right? And I'm also, again, I'm a librarian, and by no means am I saying don't go to the library. Um, any of these are going to be really important to your students, okay? So any of these are great options, but I want to kind of highlight again what the differences are. So with OER, not only can we access them, we also have the ability to share and modify them, all right? Whereas a free resource, most of the time, it falls under copyright unless it has that Creative Commons license applied to it. So we can access it, but in very few cases are we able to download or share it. Sometimes not, but that's a major limiter. And with library access, okay, I want to make sure we all understand this. Our budget goes to making sure that we have paid access to a lot of things that would usually be under a paywall or behind a paywall. All right. You get specific access to that as students, faculty, and staff. And most of that comes from, excuse me, student tuition dollars. So that is very much not free. It's you have the license permission to use it in the time that you are employed by that network in the library. All right. So there's three pretty big differences there. And I just want to, again, all of them are really useful tools, especially when we start talking about these. But I wanted to highlight that in addition to having access to it, in OER, we can actually actively modify and update them. Okay. So why does this matter, right? Why is it important for students to have free access to their course materials? So this is a survey from 2022 from the Florida Virtual Campus Distance Learning and Student Services. They asked students, what happens if you can't afford textbooks? What happens? So 64% of those students surveyed said they don't buy those required textbooks. 43% said that they're going to take fewer classes. So they can actually afford the course materials that are there. 41 will actively not register for a course, and others, 23% are actually going to drop it. All right. That's a problem. And the model I always say is, if we were buying a car and we were going to go spend $23,000 on a car, in what world, like tuition, right? In what world do they then need to spend an extra $600 to get those tires replaced before they can even actively use that car? Um, we are all familiar with the economy and how important every dollar is. Our students are absolutely no different, right? They're being asked to budget $1,200 a year, that's $600 a semester for their course materials, which is above the national average. All right, the national average is $1,000 a year. So if we're looking at our student body, we know that we don't have students that represent higher than the national average income. Um, it's a problem for them to not be able to afford their course materials. If you have a $150 textbook, think about what it would be like for them to have that in 5 of their classes. All right. I know you think it's important, but really, them not being able to afford their course materials is having an obscene impact. Another really interesting tidbit that I actually thought I've never seen this actually put into data before. It's something that I always kind of knew about was how many faculty are putting required textbooks on their syllabus and then not even using them. Over the course of a 4-year college career, students report not using 3.6 of their required textbooks. All right, so imagine spending $150 or more on a book and not being able, like not even having to use it. Um, That's a problem. So another thing that I want to also highlight is that because we are able to modify some of these materials, right? We also are able to increase a sense of belonging, right, in our classroom. So if we know that we have a certain percentage of students from downstate, we should probably have some of our materials being reflecting that, like putting their hometowns in, there's ways for us to do that. It's a way for us to really, again, increase that sense of belonging and not make our students feel othered. Right. So for faculty, why does this matter for you? Right. Um, so one of the really good things about OER is when you link it into your syllabus or your LMS, students have access on the very first day of class, which is huge. Imagine having all the students prepared during syllabus week. All right, how often does that actually happen? I know I was never that student. But in addition to that, they also have perpetual access to it, right? Most of the time, if we have content that is on an online platform, including Brightspace, they lose access at the end of the semester. If we are doing our best to prepare students for careers and the workforce, don't we want them to be able to refer back to some of the resources that we used in the classroom? So being able to have perpetual access to that, meaning beyond graduation and as they enter the workforce, that's a major benefit to OER. Because remember, when you have the library, you lose that access the day you graduate. Okay. So in addition to that, right, as when you're working with OER, faculty are able to flexibly tailor their content. So again, if you're trying to, work on a very specific thing within Schoharie County, you can localize that. You have the ability to do that. You are in complete control of updating your own textbook, right? Especially in the sciences, things are happening so quickly. Imagine being able to, again, update the textbook you're using. And then in doing that, not only are you making sure your students have access to the most updated content, you also then become a co-author on that material, right? And you can involve your students. There's that open pedagogy, right? Which of course supports innovative teaching practices. It's making sure that students have, again, access to things and making sure that it's really contributing to their ability to be active people in their whatever career they go into. Um, Another thing I want to highlight is that we know students are struggling with the reading of textbooks. Okay. We know that if we are assigning 50 pages, 100 pages, we're lucky if they are skimming the headings. One of the major perks of OER, and because they are online, is that we are kind of breaking that model of the traditional textbooks where you have things that are in blocked text, you have interactives built in with it, you have videos, you have text organized in a way that we know that students are only going to be able to really read, you know, 10 lines at a time. And I don't know what the actual number is, but I know we actually have research on what their attention spans can handle. And we can do that right when we're working with these materials because we're openly licensed. All right. Another thing, I know we've talked a lot about accessibility in terms of the digital arena, especially this week with professional development, right? Most OER that are being produced these days, the OER world have been major proponents for universal design and learning for years. So most of our materials that we can adopt are already fully accessible, right? Every time we do an OER, there's multiple accessibility checkers and tools that we're already doing. So, you have the headings in the right spaces, you have closed captionings, everything is designed so that it is fully accessible. I don't know about Title II compliance exactly, but I do know that it makes it much easier to update these materials. Okay, so this is going to talk about academic impact. Um, we have the data that shows that using OER affects all students positively, right? There's major increases in grades. There's fewer rates of getting a D or an F or withdrawing from something. Um, but we see an even bigger impact on how it affects Pell eligible students. All right. So these students that are coming from low income, marginalized backgrounds, they're the ones who especially benefit from these types of open resources. And that's, again, I'm highlighting this here because this really represents the students we have here at SUNY Cobleskill. Paying attention to these financial needs and the cost of course materials is going to have an impact on their academic outcomes. We have the data. Okay. So now that I've kind of gotten you all hopefully to understand, why OER is important, I'm going to take some time to show you some examples. All right. So this is one that I know people have said to me multiple times. That so this is actually from the SUNY AI in Action. So if you are involved in AI work anywhere throughout SUNY, you probably have seen this. This is an OER. All right. It's an open textbook. I want to kind of just highlight a couple things. So just give me 1 second. Let me see if this opens. Okay. So I want to make sure you see that we have the Creative Commons license right here. We have all the authors. Uh, Part of accessibility is understanding that not everybody is going to want to have things online. So in addition to looking at these as ebooks or like in a web browser, you also have the ability to download it. You can download it. You can also get it sent to an actual e-reader. That's what the EPUB is. So if you want to read it as an ebook, that's all doable. I want to show you really quick how they have things structured. These kind of headings, this is exactly what we're looking for when we're talking about accessibility. All right. And this is what it looks like. This is what a book, an open textbook or an OER is going to look like. And what it is basically this whole wealth of information that has that open licensing. Okay. And this one really is a lot of text. It's not as broken out. The audience is not students, but I want to just make sure that we all saw that. All right. So this other example is actually from SUNY Fredonia. All right. This is more of a technical manual. It shows the capability of kind of being involved in active learning. What I really want to highlight here is that it was actually created with the support of students. All right. So the students and the supervisors from the area, I'm assuming it's their 3D printing system. But that's really a good example of open pedagogy in action, right? You have students that they all now have publishing credits. They have this as part of their resume, their portfolio, and future students can continue to update this as 3D technology advances. This is another example of an OER out of Iowa State, which has a fantastic open education program. I'm a big fan of their staff. And this kind of shows what it can be like a little closer connected to agriculture, which Iowa State does have a large program, right? So this is kind of a higher level. It shows again exactly kind of what kind of things we can have and how you can see that we do have these kind of high quality, these high content, expert level information being shared widely and openly. All right. And again, that open licensing, what this shows again is that it's Creative Commons. Attribution means that anyone using it needs to make sure that there is credit given to the original creators. Non-commercial means that nobody can then take this textbook and sell it. And share alike means that anyone who creates something using content from this book should also use a Creative Commons license. All right, meaning that no one can take a chapter and then make edits and turn it into a copyrighted material. All right. So SUNY, and as I'm getting familiar, this is kind of where I'm new to it, right? SUNY has a pretty robust support network for OER and open resources. One of the things that I thought was really cool is in addition to having their own catalog of open textbooks, they also have what's called a ready to adopt catalog, which is really geared towards courses. All right. So this means that in addition to textbooks, students or faculty also have basically it's this whole class that you can import directly into Brightspace that has all assessments. It's the reading materials. It has everything that you need to run an entire course. All right. So I'm going to open up one example. Actually, I think I've got two examples that I want to share with you. And again, you can actually link to all these catalogs through the guide that we gave you in the beginning. All right. Um, Once you get to a course that is interesting to you, all right, you can actually, you don't need to log into anything to actually view the content. All right. So if you want to see if it's relevant for you for your course, you can actually go in. All right. It's going to have you come to modules. You're going to click on start here. All right. And it's telling you exactly how you don't need to create an account and password. So if you follow the instructions, which is that you're going to basically enter the CAPTCHA, once you hit this link, you'll be able to view the entire course and evaluate it. I want to show you what this looks like. And I'm sharing this because when I first looked at it, I was completely appalled that I would have to log in to look at it first. So this is kind of what it would look like for you to go through. You can see the assignments. Uh, you can see the entire course and evaluate whether or not this is something that you can use for your existing course, right? And remember, because it's openly licensed, you don't have to take all of it, right? If there's reading recommended in one of these, you can use just the reading, or you can, use just the assignments. You can pick and choose which part of these you want to use. You don't have to do the entire thing. That's one of the beauty of being able to make those revisions, right? Okay, so there's another example I wanted to show because I do think that this would actually be a really good thing for us to use here. And this is how it pertains. This is a college success OER. All right. So if we're going to do the same thing where we go in and talk about course outcomes, let's see. All right. I'm not going to try to figure out where things are opening. So I want to show you that this is another very similar thing where we could, in theory, adopt some parts of this. What really interested me specifically is that there are a whole section on AI. Specifically about the ethical use of AI and evaluating information. Um, Hang on, I want to make sure. There we go. No, it's not. All right, I'll figure that out. That just keeps bringing us back to that page. But it's another example that it doesn't necessarily need to be in a classroom, right? We can, in theory, give this college success guide to students through orientation. I'm not saying they're going to read it, but we can also adopt parts of this. So if you're looking to kind of think of how to cover AI in your course, you could adopt a part from this class and incorporate it because it's openly licensed. All you would have to do is say, I pulled this information from the College Success OER from SUNY Services. Okay, so that's kind of how this can work. It doesn't have to be in a textbook setting. Okay. All right. So let's talk really quickly about where you can actually find OER. Okay, we're going to drop that OER LibGuide into the chat one more time so everyone who is here has access to it. Um, because this is really going to be discipline specific. Depending on what you are teaching is going to kind of drive where you look. I'm going to tell you first and foremost, right out the bat, that general education courses are basically covered. There's a ton of resources that are out there specifically for gen eds. I would encourage you to look at OpenStax, which is through Rice University, and also the SUNY textbooks and that SUNY Ready to Adopt collection. Um, If you are looking more kind of specifically towards something, say agricultural, or something that's more technology related, I would encourage you to look someplace like Oasis or the Pressbooks directory. Pressbooks is the platform that actually hosts most open textbooks. And so I just want to make sure like that's where you can kind of get a lot of really cool examples of what's out there. All right. I'm not going to go through and do searches for all of these. I just want to make sure you know that these links are all readily available for you in the guides. And once you start searching, depending how those initial searches go, come talk to me. And I'm happy to kind of either help you find something more specific, or it also might be the reality that there's not going to be something out there and we might have to kind of piece things together, or even think about creating. That's another option. All right. So, as faculty, I am absolutely positive that you know that there is a lot of misinformation out there. Just like anytime you're online or anytime you're looking for information, you need to critically evaluate what you're looking at. In most cases, um, we have really credible information out there, but you also are the expert in your field. That's why you're teaching. So I really encourage you to, again, think about your learning outcomes, think about the students that you're serving. And when you're looking for these, don't just look at the title or the chapter, think very critically about whether or not it's going to work for your students. We have a lot of resources available for you to do that. I love a good rubric. So if you go to that guide, we have a lot of checklists and rubrics that'll help you understand exactly what you're looking at, in terms of accessibility and information. And you're just going to need to take your kind of expert lens to that. Um, Again, we should be doing some sort of evaluation at any time we're consuming information, right? So I just want to make sure we understand that that's in addition to all the other contexts, you also need to take those that lens to your open materials that you're using in your courses. All right, so I give you a ton of information today. So here are some potential steps that you can take going forward, right? Reach out to me. I love talking about OER and open in general, and I love the idea of working with you to update your syllabus. It would be really great if we can kind of get this going at the department level, right? So if you're interested in this, talk to people in your department about what you learned, what excited you today, um, and then reach out to me, talk to me. Really, whatever you need to kind of consider this, I want to help you get that. Um, so go ahead, and I'm not sure if you already dropped my email into the chat. I want to make sure you all have that. The guide that I talked about, is going to be available to you, and that's where I'm going to be making all of my updates, right? So it's a good place to get started. It's a place to bookmark if you're kind of interested in searching. Um, Go ahead and see if you can find some resources that would be available that could help in your course. If there's anything that's a simple adoption, all you need to do is link it in your syllabus. That's all you need to do. If you want to link it into your LMS, I'm happy to help you figure out how to do that. I also, again, I've been working in OER for a long time. I actually am on the steering committee for the Northeast OER Summit, which I'm obviously a little biased. I think it's fantastic. It's going to be taking place on March 25th to the 26th. If there's enough interest in that, I would love to apply for professional development funding to pay for registration for a different faculty. Registration for that is $35. We keep that at a low cost. Again, trying to make it accessible. We're going to be focusing a lot on bridging AI in higher education and OER. So that's definitely something that is changing the landscape, and we're going to be talking about that a lot. So if you're interested, consider applying that. There's also a form that I created, and Faye's going to go ahead and drop that into the chat for me. This is not attendance. All right, I'm not taking formal attendance today. But if there's anything that I talked about today that you are curious about and you're interested in kind of getting targeted information about OER, open pedagogy, um, go ahead and fill out that form. I try not to spam faculty, and I understand that some people just don't have the capacity to kind of take this on right now. And I understand that. But that being said, I love the idea of kind of building a little core network and team of people who can kind of share with each other and learn from each other. So fill out that form if you are interested in receiving additional communication from me specifically about OER. Okay. These are the references. I threw a lot of data out at you today, and I want to make sure that you all can verify. That's an important part of my job. So there's my references. The slide deck will be available in the LibGuide as soon as I make it fully compliant. Right now it is not, and so I'm trying to make sure I practice what I preach. So that being said, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and open the floor to questions. Um, yeah, anybody have any questions? Let me stop.
I had to join late, Teresa. Will you share the slides?
Yes, I'm going to share the slides. They'll be posted on the LibGuide that
Okay,
I,
sorry.
and no, that's okay. I'm very aware that it's not compliant right now. So, as soon as I update that, they will be shared.
Um, Thank you so much, Teresa. This is Myri. This is awesome. I can't even. One of the things I'm wondering, gosh, there's so many wishes. But anyway, let's move forward to the now. Um, if I have, so I have used a text or I use a textbook in my course, and I was looking at OpenStax last semester to potentially use for my course, but I just didn't have the capacity to kind of like review it and such. And I've been and I put a question in the chat with regards to, and I think you really answered it quite well in terms of that modifying component of the OER, in terms of like that being a really big sticking point for a lot of the faculty, at least in my department, in terms of just like credibility and that anyone can just change it as on a whim and such. And I think you spoke to that component really nicely, and I appreciate that, so thank you. But can I is it it's more of an ethical question, I guess, right now, is can I share some of these open resources like the OpenStax or this bio for majors 2 that was on the SUNY site with my students, even though I've already put it through eCampus and said it's, a required textbook, and some students have already paid for it. So I feel like I'm a little bit concerned about those who've already paid for it that put through that money and they're like, well, shoot, now I can't return it. So I mean, this might be more for a therapist to consider, but I'm not sure if you can answer it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm actually really curious to know what other faculty might say about that because my instinct, of course, is to say share it. That being said, I don't know if that's the right answer, right? Can you see if people have bought, like, can you actually see if people have bought textbooks through eCampus?
I can't see that, but I do know from some students who have emailed me saying that they had purchased it already. So I guess that's my only concern is for that, the ethical value, like I guess the fairness of that some people who were really ready to do it, regardless of whether or not they could, bought the textbook because they really want to do well in this class.
Yeah. And what that, yeah, no, I get that. And when I was in grad school, that was me. Um, are you able to message students? I mean, it also might be a question you ask on the first day of class.
Yeah, totally. And I think I'll do that. A lot of students do kind of wait till the first week, so I can kind of put that in my introductory slides and say, hey, there's also this resource that you can use. Cool.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
mean, definitely like talk to them, see, yeah, see.
Yeah,
It might be that the best course forward, if enough of them have bought it, I don't know. But yeah, talk to them. I would say ask them.
awesome. Thank you.
Faye, I see your hand up.
Yes, we have a question in the chat just saying, just to confirm, such as OER College Success course, the materials can be used in entirety, piecemeal, and or altered for use.
It depends on the license. I need to double check. I do believe that that is the way the Lumen courses are set up. Um, because I was very pleasantly surprised. At first, I was kind of put off by the fact that things were in this Lumen ecosystem, right? And I was very impressed by the SUNY OER people when I came on. That being said, I'm not able to, it keeps linking back to that same page, so I can follow up with you. Jess F, if you want to message me your email, I'm happy to follow up with you to let you know specifically what the licensing speaks to there. All right, Christina Trees.
Hi. Yeah, I've been using a textbook through one of the Lumen courses for quite a few years now. And because I'm one of those professors that I want my students to have a source, but I do my own thing when I'm teaching. And I don't want, but I want us all to have a basic place to go for the basic definitions and things like that. So making them spend money on a textbook seemed just mean-spirited. So this has been a way for me to do it. And the Lumen courses have so much stuff in them. And the first time I just they downloaded, they worked with me and they downloaded the whole thing into my course for me, or gave me a way to do that. And it was like, I didn't want to use any of this stuff because I have my own stuff, that stuff from teaching. As long as I have my own things. But that so yes, work with them, know that you can use a little bit or a lot. The students really appreciate when they don't have to buy a textbook. I can't tell you the kudos I get for that, because they just don't want to buy these big things. They're not going to be an economist. So I've been very pleased over the years that I have that access there. Sometimes I use some of the charts and things in class. I'll pull it up and try and show them that, yes, I'm linking this to the textbook, even though I do a lot of my own stuff. So I definitely recommend to anybody to look into this as a way of making things more accessible for your students financially and in other ways.
Yeah, Christina, thank you so much. And I do want to highlight that even though I am new here, the SUNY OER folks are fantastic and very well established, and they've been really helpful to me. And I kind of get on board, and I have a lot of very nitpicky questions. And so, absolutely, we're not starting from zero right now. It's just my familiarity is beginner level right now. All right, so I want to kind of just go through the chat really quick and see if I missed anything. Thank you so much. I'm so glad that you guys, Charles. Yeah, Charles, thank you so much for sharing that about so Lumen Learning is the platform that SUNY OER uses. I know it can be kind of daunting when you see a lot of different names being thrown around. All right. So okay, we still have 12 minutes. That being said, I understand that it is early still, and I would love to give you some time back to your day. If there are more questions, I'm happy to hang out. Um, Otherwise, I hope you all have a really wonderful day. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa.